What is happening? It's your boy LDAWB coming at you with a new video, and today we're going to explore Final Fantasy XVI's protagonist Clive and asking the question, is he in fact the modern day Bartz from Final Fantasy V? As I'm sure most of you won't agree, and that's okay. Before I explain myself, let me briefly describe who these two characters are first. Let's start with Clive. As of this recording, and since the game is months away from release, not much is known about Clive, but what we do know about him is that he is the eldest son of the Archduke of Rosalia. At 15 years old, serving as a shield and protector to his little brother Joshua, the dominant or inheritor of the icon Phoenix. Clive is also blessed in extent to some of Phoenix's abilities and handles combat with the blade fairly well for his age. His personality in the beginning is somewhat stoic, kind, and yet very loyal to his brother Joshua, Jill, the soon-to-be inheritor of the icon Shiva, and Torgal, his pet wolf companion that accompanies Clive throughout his journey. Clive is also the dominant of Ifrit, yet another fire icon, like the Phoenix. How these two exist together with the same element is unknown. He also has a white chocobo steed that we find with him in the Awakening trailer. Whether he goes away after the first and two age arcs are unknown, but it looks to have a return later in the third arc of Clive, as he is riding with Sid, the dominant of Rama, and Torgal in the Revenge trailer. From what we've seen so far, Clive solely has access to different icon abilities and can swap and alter different attack patterns based on what icons he has equipped as he goes forth in extracting his revenge for his fallen family and kingdom. Bartz Clauser is the protagonist of Final Fantasy V. He is an upbeat, friendly, courageous, and lighthearted in personality, and starts off as a wanderer, but later becomes one of the warriors of light, with the element of wind at his side. He also has a friendly chocobo steed named Boko. He goes on an adventure with the other warriors of light, Lena, Galif, and Ferris, as they encounter the ever-popular Gilgamesh, one of X-Death's henchmen, as well as X-Death himself, and stopping his plan of wiping away reality for good. Now, when I'm talking about Bartz here, I'm not referring to the Dissidia counterpart, which is probably his most popular adaptation, either the Amano adaptation with his white hair. The Bartz I'm referring to is the sprite version of the original game. Obviously in personality they're different, but they both have similar design aesthetics that should be noted. Like for example, in comparing young Clive to Bartz in the original FF5 sprite design, notice both of their hair forms, how the base of their hair goes up. Yes, the bangs are different, I know that. Why make them exactly the same and then undermine their differences? Notice how both the eye colors of Clive and the sprite version of Bartz are both blue. The popped up collar designs and tunic aesthetics. Aged Clive still exhibits this same facade in his aged and prominent arc, like the version we see in the cover art for FF16. Not to mention the cape version of both Bartz with the original design and aged Clive. Like how I mentioned before that they both have chocobo companions. Yes, both of them having chocobo steeds accompanying them throughout their journey. How about the thorough name choices as well, right? Yeah, alright. Anyway, above all these things, however, and most importantly, they both have the ability to change, alter, and level up separate entity abilities. In Bart's case, with Final Fantasy V's job system. In Clive's case, the FF16's icon system. Let me explain. After reading through interviews from Yoshi P, the producer of Final Fantasy XVI, Takai, the director, and Mihiro, the creative director and scenario scriptwriter with 4Gamer and Dengeki, credit to the FF16 Hub on Twitter, I found out that there are in fact references to Final Fantasy V in terms of ability customization. In an interview explaining these things, when Dengeki asking both Yoshi P and Mihiro about the entire structure of the game, whether it has changed much or not, Dengeki asked, so your image of the final shape never really changed much, but the real challenge was figuring out how to get to the final state? Yoshi P says, looking back, that's the feeling I get. Mihiro says, if we're thinking about the foundational themes of the gameplay, the truth is, aside from what we've already talked about, we kind of have an idea of, quote, let's make Final Fantasy V into an action game, quote. Question. When you think about Final Fantasy V, the first thing that comes to mind is the job change system, but Hiro adds, rather than thinking of a job change system, Better to imagine the ability customization system. In Final Fantasy V, eventually you were able to learn all the abilities, but within that system, you had to prioritize which jobs you wanted to level and customize your abilities, which settled your characters into different roles as a result. Dengeki also questions, if you're talking about the ability customization, it makes me think back to going wild with both blades and magic. The hero adds, yes, exactly, that kind of playability where you can be surprised, like, oh, I can combine things in this way, but in an action game where you're operating in real time is the kind of thinking we're after. Kai adds that kind of element, but instead of jobs, we included the icons as a base. He ends off this by elaborating on the different playing experiences for every player. Lastly, in going further in the interview with Takai and Mihiro, Dengeki expounds on the question. That is to say, in the same way that in FF5 you had the option to place abilities in different slots, the intent here is to be free to adjust your skills loadouts within the game. Takai adds, as the story progresses, the options that you can use will increase, but within that context you're free to set them up how you like. Obviously, we're trying to avoid a situation where it's clear that, quote, this is the right answer, quote, but rather where everyone can reflect their own preferences and how they play. Mihiro adds, honestly, even as we play through the game, the staff's various setups are really all over the place. Takai says, yeah, they're so divided up it's almost funny. And then Mihiro adds, so, quote, Bartz from Final Fantasy V in a real-time action game, quote, might be an easy way to get the idea of it. Straight from Mihiro himself, not just from the visual designs from the two, the functionality of its systems comparatively now similar between the two. Now with Clive, as if being like Bartz, ideally in an action game. Is this still enough to answer the question of this video though? Or did I already answer it? And there you have it. For the full interview from Dengeki, I'll leave a link to it in the description below. It's a good read. Also want to credit the FF16 Hub on Twitter. You guys are really helpful in making these interviews accessible, so thank you. With all that said though, I'm glad to see that Creative Unit 3 is showing love and nods to FF5, taking core elements from the game and bringing it to modern audiences, deservingly so. I really appreciate that and I really respect that. And if you haven't played FF5, well then what are you waiting for? Who knows, maybe that game has more segues to FF16 than we realize. It's worth a shot. But guys, what do you think? Is Clive Bartz from FF5 or am I still off? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I will do an in-depth analysis on Clive in preparation before the game's release, and then another after the game drops for a full descriptive analysis on him. I really like him and I like his design, and I feel that Ben Starr has done an amazing job as a voice actor for him so far. But look out for those vids in the meantime. For more FF related content, keep it locked there. Like, subscribe, all that jazz, and a bag of chips. Much love to my Patreons, and I'll catch y'all later in the next one. Peace.
Knew I could be my own defender. It really fucked me up and choose your own perspective. Evolved this far enough just to see life at clearance. Wolves howling at the moon, you like the secret weapon. Don't you dare come near me, gather strength to